Tax, it's always a complicated issue and more often than not one of the main headaches for people and companies alike. Joining me now to speak about how to deal with tax, the new UK government crackdown on avoidance and international jurisdictions is Clifford Frank from LEXeFISCAL. Well, Clifford, you offer advice to clients in the UK, Western Europe, America and Africa. Well, tax jurisdictions in these areas must differ quite dramatically, so what challenges does this pose?
The first thing we always look to is the double tax agreement. That gives us basically a signpost and a guide as to how we're going to approach a transaction. We then look at the tax information exchange programs because that provides a gateway for information to be exchanged between the different jurisdictions. Whilst we are not opposed to information exchange, we have to be able in a position to how we could manage that. The next thing we look at is the type of entity we should use to actually structure the transaction through. Whether it should be a limited company or a partnership or a joint venture structure or a consortium.
Well, what's the advantages of being based in the UK and what sort of clients and cases do you deal with?
We have a very advantageous tax rates for corporations. Right now, our basic rate tax is 20% for profits up to 300,000. We would then have a tax rate of 21% for profits over 1.5 million, and that's going to change from April next year to 20%. Another advantage is the ease of establishing a business in the United Kingdom. You can have a company set up within 3 hours. You could establish a public liability company in the United Kingdom for as little capital of 17,500. We handle small companies, turnover up to 20 million, then we handle major cases with profit turnovers up to 100 million.
What do you foresee will be the impact of the UK government's strategy to reclaim billions of pounds from taxpayers accused of participating in avoidance schemes?
Everyone knows about Google and the Amazon and the Starbucks. And what did they do wrong? They did nothing wrong. They used the laws which the government made in order to attract them to come and do business in the UK. They didn't break any law, they didn't do any criminal activities. Had Google not come along, employed how many thousands of people they employed, how would the government have generated jobs and keep themselves happy? And how much PAY would they have lost if they didn't create the jobs? All we're doing is applying the law. Every taxpayer has a right to organise his affairs in a manner which will produce the least tax burden. In the press is just a small minority who have no ability to actually organise their affairs because they have a simple salary and they have to pay their taxes. If I was in their position without the flexibility, I'll feel the same way.
The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development has unveiled plans to tackle profit shifting and tax avoidance of multinational corporations. What changes does this represent?
The proposal is basically a common framework for the exchange of information. Instead of every country implementing their own tax information exchange program, we're going to have one model based on the OECD model. This new policy is going to impact mainly on financial institutions, banks and credit card companies who will be obliged to actually just give up the information to the different authorities. This policy legitimizes whistleblowing, which basically prevents employers taking an action against employees who behave badly by stealing information given out.
Well, finally, what should people be aware of when approaching tax?
People, when they're approaching tax planning, have this notion that tax planning is a cheap exercise. They want to have it at the Big Mac price and then expect a Rolls-Royce service. Doesn't work. Currently, you find a lot of smaller corporations seem to think that they could set up companies and use nominee directors in various jurisdictions and believe they're not going to be affected. That's a fallacy. Never do that. You must always trust your trustee if you're going to do an international transaction. Be prepared to give up control, because control is a test which is applied by the various tax authorities to see who's in charge. And if they deem you to be in charge of an activity which is conducted outside of your jurisdiction in order to minimize your tax, you would negate the tax benefit.
Clifford, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.